Discover the incredible transformation of spending Christmas alone in an empty house. A surprising journey of self-discovery awaits. Sarah stood in the middle of her childhood home, a silence so profound it felt like a living thing bantering at her nervous laughter. This house, once a theater of boisterous family antics, now echoed the absent voices that defined her youth. Christmas was approaching, and with it came waves of nostalgia mixed with an aching loneliness. She knew she should feel alive with memories, but all she felt were shadows. The bickering, the noise, the warmth of presents, it was all trapped in photographs stacked too high in the attic. Compelled to reclaim some semblance of joy, Sarah narrowed her focus to dusting away the past. She rummaged through antiquated boxes, feeling more like a restless archaeologist than a decorated teacher. But what she found was unexpected, a cache of her late mother's letters. Some were brittle, yellowed, fragile as the dreams they carried. As she read, she discovered a woman who had sacrificed her artistic voice, silenced by duty and the weight of family expectations. Each letter ignited something dormant inside Sarah, a longing she had buried deep beneath years spent pouring herself into her students, forgetting her own aspirations. As she began painting the empty walls, strokes of vibrant colors spilled forth, spilling emotions that had long felt foreign. Yet doubt loomed heavy, creeping in like a fog. When her old friends returned, their smiles were laced with skepticism, their laughter mingled with judgment. "At your age, are you really going to dive into art?" Their words prickled her resolve, feeding an internal battle where doubt wrestled hope. Could she truly embrace what she had found, or would her dreams remain stifled beneath the weight of expectations? Before she could spiral further into despair, an email brightened her day. A local gallery was interested in showcasing her work in a community art show. Excitement surged, but so did the fear. Would she face a round of applause or a chorus of criticism? The pressure felt insurmountable. The fragile confidence she had begun to nurture seemed to quiver in the presence of looming family expectations. Could she truly assert her identity, or would she retreat into the shadows of perceived failure? Days melted away as Christmas approached, and the heaviness in her heart grew. She stood before the painted canvases, her heart racing, mind swirling, both a stranger and a familiar friend in her own life. Years of expectations loomed over her like storm clouds. Their arrival was imminent, and with it, the fear of confrontation. Would she reveal the vibrant truth that emerged or surrender yet again to the confines of their rigid ideals? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Christmas Day loomed ever closer, Sarah's internal battle intensified. Standing at the door, her hand hovered over the knob, she was faced with a momentous choice. Behind that door were familiar faces, each echoing within her the ghosts of expectations and judgment. Would they embrace the woman she had come to know or reject her for shunning their ideals? Anxiety clawed at her insides, whispering doubts into her ear, leaving her at the precipice of transformation. Sarah steadied her breath, the wood grain of the door rough against her palm as she closed her eyes and envisioned the faces waiting on the other side. The tumultuous waves of laughter and love were palpable, yet so was the potential for confrontation. Would they accept the artist emerging from within her, or would they cling to their preconceived notions of who she should be? As the clock ticked towards 6, she felt like a tangle of nerves and hope, each moment drawing her closer to an inevitable decision. With a final breath, she twisted the knob. The door swung open, and a wave of warmth and bright lights flooded the dim hallway. The scent of pine and cinnamon enveloped her, but it did little to soothe the tightening knot in her stomach. Her family awaited her, their expressions shifting from eager anticipation to mild surprise. Sarah stepped into the living room, her heart racing as she scanned the familiar faces, her father's gentle eyes, her mother's laughter lingering in the rosy-cheeked relatives, her sister's excited smile, each one a reminder of the past she was now desperately trying to redefine. "Look who finally decided to show up," her sister exclaimed, enveloping her in a hug that radiated a warmth she didn't quite return. Sarah forced a smile, even as her mind raced to prepare for the onslaught of questions that would soon follow. The evening played out like a finely scripted drama, punctuated by traditional carols and the cacophony of cheerful chatter. Yet as the laughter rang louder, Sarah felt the subtle pull of an inner voice questioning, urging her to speak her truth. She tried valiantly to immerse herself in the celebrations, sharing half-hearted jokes and stolen moments with her niece, but inside, her spirit wrestled with the guilt of hiding who she had become. "Did you bring any of your paintings?" her brother-in-law finally asked, a curious glint in his eyes that ignited her hesitations. Gasps followed, the energy in the room crackling with intrigue. Suddenly she was thrust into the spotlight, each eye a reflection of the scrutiny she feared, coupled with an undercurrent of genuine curiosity. "No, not yet." I wanted to. Her voice trailed off, lost in a wave of uncertainty. Could she really share the brilliant colors that were now as much a part of her as the shape of her past? As if sensing her struggle, her father's voice rose above the noise. "Sarah, you've always had an eye for creativity. Why don't you show us?" The sudden challenge felt like an electric jolt through her body. Everyone's eyes rested on her, and Sarah could hear the whispering of her own malcontent alongside the sweet resonance of encouragement. The moment hung heavy before her, and with it came a choice that felt monumental. To reveal her art would require peeling back layers of protection she had built over the years, risking the delicate balance of familial love and judgment. But what lay beneath that surface was a chance at authenticity. "All right," she finally said, louder than she had anticipated, "I'll return to the house tomorrow and bring some pieces." The instant applause and cheerful assent from the others crushed her with equal measures of relief and dread. How had her resolve shifted so telltale? Now came the real test, the journey into vulnerability, whether by brushstroke or heartfelt confrontation. As the festivities rolled on, Sarah found herself lost in thought, the swirling colors of her canvases dancing in her mind. The inkling of excitement ignited a flame deep within her, a flame that battled against the encroaching shadows of doubt. How would she reconcile this transformation with the expectations looming larger than ever? Later that night, Sarah lay in bed, the family's laughter still echoing in her ears, a lullaby laced with anxiety. As she stared at the ceiling, she realized tomorrow would herald not just the unveiling of her art but the beginning of her own public resurrection. As dawn broke, she sat with a cup of coffee warming her hands, heart racing in anticipation. The notion of her painting set to face an audience, especially one laden with familial ties, churned anxiety in her stomach like a tempest. Would they truly grasp the layers of herself she poured into each stroke? Would they elevate her newfound truth, or would it turn into a battleground of judgment? The time had come to face the canvas and her family. The moment of truth loomed like a gathering storm on the horizon. Her hand brushed lightly against the framed pieces she had chosen, a vibrant warrior against her fears. Would she emerge unscathed or forever altered? As the morning sunlight crept through the curtains, Sarah's heart raced with conflicting emotions, the anticipation almost unbearable. She had once thought that creativity was a private endeavor, a solace discovered in the chaos of life. Yet here she was, on the precipice of sharing her inner world with those she'd known forever, yet feared would never truly understand her. Clutching her cup of coffee, she meticulously reviewed the pieces she had chosen to display bold strokes and vivid colors, each canvas a representation of her feelings, struggles, and small victories. They were more than just art, they were fragments of her very essence. The question reverberated within her, would they see beauty or mockery? With each sip, she felt a nagging self-doubt seep in. Memories of her mother's disapproving frowns over her childhood art flooded her mind. Was she ready to open this door? Would her family see her as the artist she had worked so hard to become, or the child whose aspirations they had long dismissed? The decision to show her work crystallized in her mind, yet the hesitation still lingered. She sat down at her small wooden desk, layered with brushes and paint splatters, symbols of her enduring struggle to craft a life of authenticity. Grabbing a sketchbook, she began to write. Her handwriting flowed across the page, transforming her apprehension into raw honesty. As each word poured forth the fears, the yearnings, the potential rejection, they morphed from an internal monologue into tangible letters. This act of creation grounded her amidst the whirlpool of anxiety. A bad review won't be the end of me, she murmured to herself, recognizing the empowered voice growing inside her. These paintings express who I am. That's worth more than their acceptance or judgment. With that newfound clarity, Sarah felt a spark of courage. She didn't plan merely to show her art, she resolved to convey the stories behind the pieces, the significance that each brushstroke held. This would not be just a display, but also a sharing of her journey, her highs, her lows, and the moments when she almost lost herself. The clock began to inch closer to the anticipated hour. She prepared her thoughts, rehearsing aloud the narrative she wanted to share. She envisioned her family, intrigued and supportive, crowning her with one final wave of acceptance. Yet, the specter of their confusion loomed large, as well. What if they couldn't grasp the emotions behind her work? What if her vulnerability was met with misunderstanding? In those final moments before she left her sanctuary for the gathering, Sarah glanced at the canvases once more. They stood there, exuding color and energy, almost beckoning her to remember the passion she felt when creating them. They were her allies in this journey toward authenticity. As she drove to the family home, a mixture of excitement and dread coursed through her veins. Each rotation of the tires on the pavement mirrored her pounding heartbeat. With each mile, she wrestled with the dualities of triumph and fear, both the anticipation of finally asserting her identity and the anxiety of possibly shattering the firmly established perceptions of the people she loved most. Upon arriving, the cheers and laughter resonated through the air, but her insides felt like a stormy sea. The door swung wide, invitingly bright, and as Sarah crossed the threshold, the moment she had rehearsed in her mind flooded back. This was not just about her paintings, nor simply about revealing her identity. This was about forging connections rooted in understanding of herself and, hopefully, of those she held dear. Now, she stood before the gateway of her transformation. What awaited her inside would either serve as validation or confrontation. It was not just a test of her art, it was a challenge to her soul. With a deep breath, she stepped forward. Would her voice emerge strong enough to intertwine with the joyous sounds surrounding her, or would it be swallowed whole by familiar echoes of doubt? As she walked into the warmth of the attachment that made her family, the hum of uncertainty pressed against her skin. The time had arrived to confront not only her family's perspectives but also her deepest fears, as the real unveiling loomed just beyond her reach. The cacophony of laughter enveloped Sarah as she stepped into the living room, her senses assaulted by the swirling chaos of family gathering. Faces lit up upon her arrival, but Sarah felt an almost suffocating tightness in her chest. Conversations erupted around her, sometimes melding into a joyous background hum, but for her, the real noise came from within, a relentless internal dialogue of anxiety and self-doubt. Her mother's laughter rang out, sharp yet warm, a sound that had both comforted and chastised her throughout her childhood. In this moment, it morphed into a reminder of judgment looming just beneath the surface. Sarah forced herself to smile back at her family, to join in the festivities, but the weight of her forthcoming revelation pressed heavily on her mind, an uninvited guest at the holiday table. "Sarah, it's so good to see you." Her brother's enthusiastic hug pulled her briefly from her thoughts. His eyes shone with pride, utterly oblivious to the turmoil whirling within her. "You've got to see the kids. They've made you some ornaments. You know how creative they are," he continued, obliviously chirpy. "I can't wait," she replied, her voice a soft whisper lost amidst the noise. As they exchanged pleasantries, she watched the children dart around like comets, their unfiltered exuberance a stark contrast to her internal battle. Each excited giggle hammered home her doubts. She wondered if she could ever capture such unadulterated joy in her work. "Dinner is almost ready," her mother shouted from the kitchen, pulling Sarah back into the reality of the moment. As they all gathered around the table, she felt their collective focus shift, the bright anticipation of shared stories and hearty meals overshadowing her own unease. The first course began with the usual small talk, but Sarah remained on edge. The ceramic plates clinking together echoed like clockwork ticks, counting down the seconds until she would expose herself. Despite the warm homey scent of baked bread and sweet cinnamon, an invisible chill enveloped her shoulders. Each frigid moment brought her closer to vulnerability. "Sarah, how's your art coming along?" her mother asked, her tone casual yet probing. The question hung in the air like an unwanted guest. A knot formed in Sarah's stomach. She met her mother's inquisitive gaze, feeling exposed under its scrutiny. "Actually, I have some pieces to show you," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Tonight?" Her mother raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched across her features. "Are you sure? You know we don't always understand." A sharp inhale caught in Sarah's throat. The refrain of self-doubt crashed over her. What if this would merely reinforce her fears of inadequacy? But those fears were met with a defiance she didn't know she possessed. "I need you to understand, Mom. This is important to me." The table went still, forks and knives suspended midair. The vulnerability of her voice enveloped the room, and in that quiet moment, she sensed an opening, a sliver of connection. Would her defiance fracture the fragile equilibrium they had? Or would it bring them closer in a way she hadn't dared to dream? Dinner progressed, laughter felt bittersweet, flavors muddled by unspent anxiety. Once the last morsels were consumed, anticipation coiled around Sarah like a coiled snake. As she prepared to unveil her art, she understood it was no longer just about the canvases. It was about stepping into the realm of authenticity, challenging long-held perceptions. With her heart pounding, she stood up and fixed her gaze on the family's expectant faces. The moment to share had arrived, and everything felt suspended in time. She could feel a surge of power. For the first time, she recognized that her perspective was valid, worthy of love and understanding. "The time has come to face not only my fears but also the true meaning of family." But just as she spoke, her mother's phone buzzed on the table, slicing through the charged atmosphere like a knife. "Excuse me," her mother said, glancing at the screen, moments before her eyes widened in shock. In that instant, a fresh wave of uncertainty swept through Sarah. What revelation lingered just beyond the veil of their evening? As her mother's expression darkened, Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her. Was this family gathering about to fracture under the weight of unexpected news? Would it change everything she had worked to achieve? Sarah's heart raced as her mother's face filled with disbelief. This was not how she had envisioned the evening unfolding. The atmosphere thickened, holding its breath, waiting for the words that would follow that silence. She could feel her heart thundering in her ears, drowning out the noise of her surroundings. "What is it, Mom?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. The excitement she had mustered to share her work felt fragile against the weight of whatever had just disturbed them. Her family's reactions shifted instantly, concern replacing the warmth that had previously filled the room. Her mother slowly lowered her phone, the color draining from her cheeks. It's your father," she stammered, struggling to regain composure. "There's been an accident." The room spun as Sarah's stomach dropped. Time seemed to slow, as disbelief wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. This was not the moment she had anticipated. Instead of laying bare her artistic journey, she now faced the fragmented remnants of family interwoven with new fears: identity, loss, and support. "What kind of accident?" she managed to ask, desperation creeping into her voice. Her mother shook her head, her bewildered eyes glistening. "I don't know yet. I'm sure it'll be all right. I need to go, we need to go." The last words hung in the air, transforming the holiday gathering into a stark reality where the normalcy of family was suddenly fragile. Panic rose within Sarah as she witnessed the family fall into chaos. Each relative was propelled into motion, reaching for coats and grabbing their phones, faces drawn in worry. The energy in the room shifted unrecognizably, as if gravity had suddenly loosened its hold. Moments earlier, she was on the brink of emotional revelation and connection. Now, she was caught in a tumult of displacement. Yet amidst the whirlwind, Sarah felt a flicker of resolve ignite within her. This was not just about her father, it had become about her, too. In this crucible of uncertainty, she recognized that the very act of defining her identity through art had prepared her for moments of unforeseen upheaval. No longer just trapped in her thoughts, she had a place to express her feelings, the art that offered her a voice amid turmoil. As family members filed towards the door, Sarah hesitated, unsure. Should she follow? Should she reveal her work now, or wait until the tumult subsided? Her heart ached to share her truth, to expose her vulnerability, to assert herself as a creative force alongside familial ties. But the heart of the matter now lay in urgency. Her father needed her family, and they needed each other. "I'm coming with you," she announced, her voice slicing through the chaos. The words were not merely declarative, they felt cathartic, as if the act of speaking them shifted the balance within her. She joined the mass exodus, but not without purpose. She could wield her expression in this turbulent time, allowing her creativity to contribute to the tapestry of their lives. Amidst the rushing confusion, Sarah felt something burgeon inside her, a realization that she could blend her personal narrative, her growth, within the shared story of her family. Despite this unexpected twist, she recognized her capacity to influence not just her own path, but that of her loved ones as well. As they piled into the car, the uncertainty loomed large, yet she also felt a sense of convergence, a balancing of her anxieties with an insistent need for connection. The road stretched out before them, symbolizing the unknown transitions they were collectively about to navigate. In that moment, with the phone vibrating in her pocket, a reminder of her unfinished thoughts, Sarah knew she was on the cusp of not just a family crisis, but her own evolution. What would emerge once they arrived at the hospital? Would her newfound strength allow her to hold her family's narrative together, just when it threatened to unravel? The answer lay ahead, as a shift clung to the air, heralding her deepening journey toward understanding not only the meaning of family, but the true essence of vulnerability and strength. Each turn in the road carved out her evolving identity, leading her toward the next revelation yet to come. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Sarah and her family stepped into the hospital. A chill raced through her, amplifying the uncertainty that clung to them like a second skin. The air reeked of antiseptic and anxiety, a stark contrast to the warmth of family dinners and laughter. In these sterile halls, laughter felt like a long-lost language, and whispers carried a weight that made her feel suffocated. As they approached the reception desk, Sarah's heart beat in time with her mother's frenzied questions, echoing off the stark walls. Each response from the staff felt like a drop in an ocean of confusion, afloat in a sea of medical jargon. Their father was stable, they said. But stable felt ambiguous. It could mean anything. Alive yet not fully present. The moment stretched, drawing out her tension until it shimmered around her like an electric current. She felt a pull within herself, a desire to lash out against the anxiety suffusing her family. In stepping into the hospital, they had abandoned their roles as the protectors, becoming mere vessels of fear. Who were they anymore, if the affliction could fracture them so quickly? She fought against the instinct to retreat and instead recognized this as the crucible of her becoming. With the time they had to wait dragging on, Sarah offered her support to her mother, squeezing her hand. Yet beneath the facade of solidarity, she felt the impulse to run somewhere, anywhere far from this waiting room, where despair often cozied in the corners. What was she if she didn't find the words to rally them? What good would her artwork be if it remained silent now? David, her younger brother, sat quietly, oblivious to the weight of the situation. He busied himself with a game on his phone, a soothing escape that elicited mixed feelings within her. Was it strength to disconnect from pain, or a refusal to acknowledge its presence? She let out a breath. The complexity of their family dynamics blossomed in that moment, each a vessel carrying their own interpretations of love and loss. In a sudden burst of determination, she turned her attention to the blank paper she had slipped into her bag earlier, a sketch pad where her thoughts could find form. Sarah reached for a pen, her hands trembling not from fear but from the potent desire to channel everything she felt onto those pages. The act of capturing the moment could be her way of reasserting control, of creating instead of merely reacting. Sweeping strokes filled the paper, each line dictated by the rhythms of her emotional state. She sketched her family, the worry lining their faces melting into shapes filled with more colors than gray. The light glinting off the edges of the pages encouraged her to explore the nuances that defined them: her father's strength even in vulnerability, her mother's fierce unwavering love, and even David's innocent detachment. Moments later, she glanced at the drawing, her heart racing not from fear but from the swift rush of acceptance. In art, her voice resonated. She could speak for them all, translating their quiet struggles into something tangible. Maybe this was her true gift, conjuring beauty from the chaos surrounding them. As the nurse appeared around the corner, Sarah glimpsed a flicker of awareness in her mother's eyes, one that felt strangely akin to hope, radiating through the shadows. In that instant, Sarah knew she could step into the role of both a daughter and an artist, refusing to let fear dictate their emotions. The first wave of determination rolled through her. The time had come for her to emerge as the anchor, to aid her family while allowing her creative spirit to flourish amidst uncertainty. Yet, with each gasp of hope, another wave of trepidation plummeted inside. Could her art truly convey the depth of their experience? As she prepared to rise and face her waiting family, an unease coursed through her, reminding her that every journey required facing untold fears. The boundaries of identity were born within turbulence, and she stood on the precipice of her transformation. What awaited her in her father's hospital room? Would she find the strength to share her art and help her family confront their darkest hour? The answers felt closer than ever, yet the weight of resolution hung palpably in the air, compelling her forward. The polished floor of the hospital corridor glistened under the fluorescent lights as Sarah made her way toward the room where her father lay. Each step felt monumental, as if the weight of her anxieties pressed down, testing her resolve. The surrounding bustle faded into background noise, the rhythmic beeping of machines fracturing her thoughts. Would she really be able to communicate everything she felt, the fear, the love, the unresolved questions? Once outside her father's room, she paused, drawing in a deep breath. The heavy wooden door loomed before her, a threshold not just into the room but into an emotional vortex of vulnerability. She sensed the gravity of this moment. She was no longer just a daughter worried for her father, but an artist stepping into the chaotic realm of familial despair armed with her sketches, determined to redefine their shared narrative. Inside, her father lay motionless, an array of tubes and wires marking him as a patient. The slight rise and fall of his chest was reassuring but didn't fully dispel the specter of uncertainty. Sarah could feel her pulse quicken as she approached, the combined essence of hope and dread intertwining like the tangled brush strokes on her sketch pad. "Hey, Dad," she whispered, her voice barely above a hush. For a brief moment, it felt as if she were the artist stepping up to an empty canvas, both terrified and exhilarated to paint. She pulled out the drawing, careful not to disturb the fragile air around him. "I made something for you." The act of revealing her art felt like exposing a piece of her soul, a soul marred by worry yet illuminated by clarity. Holding the sketch close, she felt the vulnerability of sharing her inner landscape, fearful that it might unintentionally deepen the shadows of worry etched on their faces. What if he couldn't connect with her creation? As she unfolded the paper, she focused on the fluidity of her thoughts, embracing the freedom that art provided. Every line represented a facet of their shared experience, while colors flowed from the brush of her heart, embodying the essence of both love and fragility. The image depicted their family standing together strong, united, even in the face of adversity. "It's us," she said softly, her eyes glistening. "Stronger together, no matter what." She could barely contain the lump rising in her throat, the simultaneous impulse to weep and to celebrate their bonds manifesting through her art. Suddenly, she caught herself. What was she truly offering? Was this sketch merely an escape, a way to mask their looming darkness? In that moment of reckoning, she recognized the truth. Her artwork had the power to echo their realities, but it couldn't serve as a mere distraction. It had to foster connection, encouraging open dialogue about their fears and aspirations beneath the sterile ceilings of the hospital. As Sarah looked up, she met her mother's gaze, which glimmered with a complex blend of fear and appreciation. The emotional distance began to shrink, like a light penetrating the hospital gloom. In that brief exchange, it became clear to her that vulnerability could birth resilience, that her role was not just as an artist, but as a bridge for healing. Steeling herself, Sarah vowed to face her own anxieties head-on, allowing her artwork to be not just an expression but a means of confrontation. She needed her family to see not just the artwork but the emotions driving it, the unfiltered love she felt for them, intertwined with their pain. Something shifted within her, a deep realization that creative expression and emotional honesty could intertwine. This realization ignited her spirit, propelling her to delve deeper into her art to confront their shared reality. With newfound fervor, she turned towards her father, ready to share not only the sketch but everything she felt. What if the real challenge now lay in recognizing how their journey could shape her artistic evolution? Could she illuminate their struggle through creativity in a way that brought solace? As the door creaked open wider, Sarah braced herself. She was prepared. The moment had arrived. Would stepping into her father's world of pain guide her toward an extraordinary journey of artistic rebirth? Little did she know, the answers resided not in the drawings themselves but in the depths of their shared experiences waiting to be explored. The air hung heavy with a mixture of antiseptic and muted possibility as Sarah's voice cut through the silence. Her father's eyelids fluttered, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw a spark of recognition flicker through his clouded gaze. It ignited a flicker of hope within her, the desire for connection, even amidst the chaos of medical machinery and uncertainty. "Dad," she said, her voice steadier now, threading urgency through the quiet. "I want to share this with you, to open a dialogue. I know it's hard, but I need you to understand how much you mean to me." As she spoke, she felt an electric thrill course through her, the realization that vulnerability was a potent catalyst for growth. She placed the sketch in front of him once again, her heart racing as she awaited his response. Each beat resonated like the distant rhythm of a drum, marching toward some unforeseen destination. She needed to know if her offering resonated with him, whether it transcended the sterile fluorescent light of reality. A moment passed, and the weight of expectation settled around her like a shroud. What if he didn't react? What if he remained distant, locked in his own pain while hers simmered just beneath the surface? Yet, just as she began to withdraw into a spiral of doubt, his hands stirred slightly, moving ever so gradually toward the paper. The motion felt monumental. The simple act was a bridge being built between them, a silent acknowledgement that their shared narrative was worth exploring, even amidst suffering. His fingers, trembling softly, brushed across the drawing, tracing the outlines she'd so carefully crafted. You see us," he murmured, the rasp of his voice barely cutting through the beeping machine. His words bore the weight of years lost and the possibility of words yet unsaid. At that moment, the embers of determination ignited within her. She understood now that this was not merely about her artistry. Her father's fragile connection to the world through her sketches could foster deeper conversations about fears and health, unraveling the knots of unspoken emotions. Armed with that realization, Sarah felt a surge of courage. "Yes, Dad. It's about you, Mom, and me. We're intertwined in this. I've struggled with what to say, how to bridge this gap. But I need you to know that I'm here and we will get through this together." With each word, she conjured an atmosphere of open-heartedness, feeling the pulse of their shared experience beat steadily within her. The sketch transformed into a conduit for dialogue, amplifying the essence of family without words, art offering a voice to unvoiced fears. Suddenly, the reality of her own struggles loomed large. Could she be the facilitator of these conversations? The weight of responsibility was daunting, yet exhilarating. The path to emotional openness had never felt more tangible than in that sterile room, where a simple drawing transformed their vulnerability into shared strength. "Can we talk?" she ventured, the lump in her throat returning, but this time steeped in intent. "Can we share what we're feeling? This, right here, is our chance to heal." Her father's expression shifted, a mix of confusion and clarity, and in that moment, it felt as if a fragile glass wall was cracking, its pieces shimmering toward the floor. For the first time in months, Sarah saw the raw humanity in her father's eyes, piercing through the fog of medication and pain. "Sarah, I'm afraid," he finally admitted, his voice trembling but earnest. The confession landed heavily in the space between them, the confession catalyzing a break in the current, a wave of unspoken fears crashing against the firm walls of their lives. In the echoes of that raw admission, an exhilarating idea flashed through her mind. What if she sculpted not just art, but an experience, an exhibition that melded their emotions and struggles into a cohesive narrative? The thought struck her like a bolt of inspiration. It flickered with the promise of unveiling not only her father's battles but her own, and perhaps even the hope of a healing journey through their shared voices. But was she prepared for that kind of vulnerability? Would weaving their stories together expose her own weaknesses or empower them both? The urgency surged, as she realized the risk of stepping forth in this way. Would creating a tangible narrative through art provide them clarity, or would it unravel deeper fears they might not yet be ready to face together? The door of possibility swung wide open, and stepping into that space felt exhilarating and terrifying. Sarah knew that embracing the vulnerability required a leap of faith not just for herself, but for her entire family. Would this commitment forge a path to deeper understanding, or would it risk diluting the very emotions she hoped to convey? As the faint clicks of machinery filled the air around them, Sarah took a deep breath, ready to dive into this experimental journey. The threads of their realities waited to be unraveled. In that room, illuminated by a single light, the question lingered: how far could her art reach, and was her family ready to confront the emotions buried beneath the surface? In the days that followed her father's admission of fear, Sarah found herself at a crossroads within her own mind. The hospital room transformed into a makeshift studio, each sketch a dialogue, the visual reflections of unspoken thoughts that now demanded to be voiced. With each stroke of her pencil, she confronted her own hesitations, grappling with the burgeoning idea of an exhibition that might serve as both catharsis and connection. The familiar weight of the sketchbook bore down on her, a reminder not only of her artistry but of her responsibility to navigate this intricate web of familial emotions. She needed direction, a plan to marry her creativity with their shared healing process. But what did that truly mean? Would exposing their vulnerabilities deepen their bond, or would it shatter their already fragile realities further? She sought solace in the nearby park, an oasis where she often found clarity amid the chaos of her thoughts. The brisk air felt sharp against her skin, invigorating in a way that called for action. Sitting on a weathered bench, she opened her sketchbook and stared at the blank pages, a canvas yet untainted by expectation. How could she turn her father's fears into a narrative that resonated? With every arcing movement of her pencil, hesitant ideas began to congeal. Perhaps she could create a series capturing their shared experiences, both the pain of illness and the flickers of joy they once shared as a family. But it wasn't just about her father's battle. It also required vulnerability on her part, revealing her struggles as a caregiver, a daughter, an artist. A rush of adrenaline coursed through her, igniting her passion like nothing before. She committed to producing not just images but stories. Each artwork would encapsulate a different facet of their relationship, moments of vulnerability intertwined with resilience. What if the exhibition became a place where they could confront their fears together without the pressure of an audience? A private sanctuary masked as a public showing. As she closed the sketchbook, her plan began to firm up in her mind. There was security in structure. She decided that the first piece would represent her father's fear, depicting him in the sterile confines of the hospital, surrounded by ghostly figures of what once was their life. With every detail, she could evoke a dialogue her father's unvoiced worries could resonate through her art. Yet, with this clarity came the heavy weight of doubt. She envisioned the confrontation ahead, the day she would share these poignant pieces with her father. How would he react to the naked honesty of it all? Would he see her as an artist trying to exploit their pain, or as a daughter striving to connect deeply through her craft? The thought brought an unsettling knot to her stomach. Each visit to her father took on a new significance. She would observe his expressions, searching for cues, gathering pieces of his narrative to weave into her own. She began to notice the small shifts in his demeanor, the way his brow furrowed when recalling memories, or the faint smiles when he spoke of their past. These nuances became golden threads entwined with her sketches, enriching the tapestry she intended to create. Determination rose within her, overshadowing the fear. The power of art could be an immense force for healing, she told herself. But was she ready for the emotional tidal wave that could follow? Was her artistic journey too ambitious for their current state? As she peered out at the park, the grand shapes of trees silhouetted against the fading sun, Sarah resolved to confront these uncertainties head-on. There was a rhythm to this endeavor, a heartbeat guiding her toward a deeper understanding of herself and her father. The question of whether they would step into this together lingered in the air, inviting her to act. Each moment waited with the potential to change everything. But as she deliberated on her next steps, a message buzzed on her phone, interrupting her thoughts. It was her mother, texted with a single question. "When can we talk?" A swirling tide of uncertainty washed over her. What did her mother want to discuss? Would it tie into the promise she made to her father, or threaten the fragile structure she had begun to build? A rush of anxiety twisted in her chest, urging her forward as she related her burgeoning plans to her mother. The moment had come when the full gravity of their family dynamic awaited her in a confrontation she hadn't anticipated. Dark clouds of anticipation descended as she prepared to respond. Would this conversation challenge everything she was attempting to build, or would it offer the breakthrough they all needed? As Sarah paced her studio, anticipating her mother's response, her thoughts spiraled into a melange of apprehension and determination. She snapped her sketchbook closed, the sound reverberating in the stillness, a harsh reminder of the imminent confrontation. Would her mother accept her artistic rebirth, or lament her value-driven expectations? Minutes felt like hours until her phone pinged again. "Let us meet tomorrow. I want to hear what you've been working on." The text was simple, but it drove a wedge of uncertainty deeper into Sarah's heart. What if this was a warning bell, a signal that her journey toward artistic expression was an affront to her mother's values? That evening, Sarah prepared with fervent energy, doodling rapidly, creating an intricate piece inspired by her father's journey, fragility depicted through ethereal shades and shadows. Thick strokes of despair were met with soft washes of color, a conflicting representation of struggle and hope. The canvas was an explosion of feelings begging for recognition, just as she longed for her family to acknowledge her development as both an artist and a person. The next day, the sun pierced through the gray clouds as she drove to her mother's house. The ambience felt different than the usual familial comfort. As Sarah entered, she was greeted with the familiar aroma of her mother's cooking, but instead of warmth, it stirred a mixture of anxiety and nostalgia. "Hey, Mom!" she called out, but there was no response. The heaviness hung thick in the air, palpable. Seated at the kitchen table, her mother appeared distracted, as if lost in her thoughts. A pot simmered on the stove, adding steam to the tension. Sarah approached hesitantly, her heart racing. "I've been working on some pieces." "Sarah," her mother interrupted, finally meeting her gaze, her expression a curious mix of concern and affection. "I've been thinking about your art, and your father." The mention sent waves of emotion through Sarah. "I know it's unconventional," she started, "but it's really important to me. It's how I express everything we're going through." "I see that," her mother replied slowly, "and I worry. I'm just not sure how to approach it. You've always been adept at academics, and now this?" The words wounded her deeper than she expected. Academic accolades had long defined Sarah's value, and now, standing at the crossroads of her new identity, she felt like a child again, bracing for disappointment. "Mom, this isn't just a hobby. It's my soul." A moment of silence stretched between them, and Sarah's confidence flickered. Looking around the kitchen, she spotted framed photographs of their unity, each filled with laughter and shared memories. These moments were significant in building their familial narrative, but they also felt like an anchor to expectations, the ones she was desperate to escape. "Sarah," her mother said gently, "you need to understand I feel so much pride in who you are, but it's hard for me to digest this shift. What if I fail? What if you see it as a waste of time?" Sarah interrupted, the frustration spilling forth. "Art is what keeps me grounded amidst everything. It shows our struggles, our love." Her mother's gaze softened, and Sarah saw the internal conflict reflected in her eyes. "You're right, but I wish I could understand it better. It's unfamiliar territory for me. I fear it'll pull you away from everything we've worked for as a family." In that moment, something shifted within Sarah. "Mom, embracing this transformative journey doesn't erase my past. Rather, it enriches it. I want to merge our stories, make our experiences tangible. This isn't just for me, it's for us." A flicker of recognition crossed her mother's face, the weight of vulnerability settling gently into the room. "Okay," she finally said, her voice shaky. "Show me what you've been creating." With exhilaration bubbling up within her, Sarah rushed to present her sketches, marveling at the colors and stories she had poured into each piece. She unfolded her latest work, a canvas representing moments of joy amidst their collective struggle. As the art unveiled their narrative, Sarah could feel the air shift. Conflicted expressions transformed into admiration. Her mother's eyes glistened not with tears of judgment but with understanding. "I didn't realize how much this meant to you," she admitted softly. After explaining each piece, a connection began to form, and for the first time, vulnerability felt like a conduit of strength rather than a fracture in their bond. "I want to create an exhibition, Mom. A space dedicated to our journey, our healing." Her mother nodded slowly, intertwined emotions reflecting in her eyes. "If this is your path, I want to support you. We'll face this together." In that moment, a profound shift occurred, a healing space birthed through acceptance. Sarah embraced her mother, fueled by the power of newfound understanding. No longer confined by expectations, her art became a bridge that intertwined their identities and evolution crafted through familial love and honesty. As they stood together, Sarah could feel solid confidence blossoming inside her. This was not merely about seeking validation, it was about transforming familial expectations into collaborative healing. In that moment, she established her position not just as a daughter, but as an artist, a storyteller, and a woman reshaping her identity through the power of connection. Now was the time for her artistic voice to resonate, a journey to cherish and renew. It was time for her legacy to flourish, and her family to stitch their narrative onto the vibrant canvas of existence. As the sun set outside, Sarah glanced at her mother, a shared understanding binding them together, a promise of artistic exploration awaiting in the horizon. They were on a path toward not just personal achievements, but a life enriched by creative vulnerability, and that realization fueled Sarah's heart with joy. This was her moment to shine. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover their strength through transformation. Comment below your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Support your loved ones on their inspiring journeys.